What we're looking at right now is a 1937 Model 812 Corb that currently resides at the Lions Automobilia Museum in Rancho Dominguez, California. This car has been going through a thorough restoration for many years, and it's now at the point of reassembly. And we have volunteers at the museum that are in process of putting this car back together. I'd like to share a little information about what this car is and just what is its historical significance. Let's take a closer look. The Corb was the first front-wheel drive vehicle sold in the US. The first model, called an L29, came out in 1929, but production stopped in late 1931 due to the Depression. It was a relatively expensive and high-end car, and Depression years were not the time to sell a vehicle of this level. Production began again in 1936 with a new design, which was called the 810. The 1937 model was called an 812, and that version also offered a supercharger as an option. For the 1936 and 1937 model year, total production was about 3,000 vehicles. The original plan was to try to produce about 1,000 per month. That never happened. So out of those 3,000 vehicles built, about 200 of them were convertibles. And the convertibles were either cabriolets, which were two-seater, or they were Phaetons, which were 4 or 5-seaters. Corbs were well known for their front-wheel drive and also the advanced styling of the 1936 and 1937 models, the 810 and the 812, which included hidden headlights, which was new for the day, and also what was known as a coffin nose front end, which completely hid the radiator, unlike other cars of the day. The engine is a 288 cubic inch flathead V8 made by Lycoming. One of the most unusual things about it, though, is that to go along with the front-wheel drive, engineers decided to put the engine in what we would consider backwards. In other words, the front of the engine is actually facing the firewall, and where you see the generator up in the top right of the screen is actually on the front of the engine. The rear of the engine, which faces forward, connects to a 4-speed manual transmission. So what at the time would be considered a very unusual configuration of an engine was what, again, Corb decided was the best for their front-wheel drive plan. This 1937 Model 812 is also a supercharged version. So the supercharger sits right here underneath the carburetor. It's a centrifugal supercharger. It's actually driven off the camshaft, which is kind of an interesting configuration, and added quite a bit of horsepower to the base normally aspirated engine. The normally aspirated V8, which came out in 1936, put out 125 horsepower. The supercharged version that was available in 1937 put out 170. So it was a significant power increase by adding that centrifugal supercharger. Another innovation was the shifting system for the 4-speed manual transmission. Normally, a manual transmission would have a shift lever on the floor or maybe on the steering column to do the shifting. Well, the shifting in this case was done by a small switch mechanism that was on the steering column, but it used a vacuum device, this large vacuum can that was on top of the transmission that would actually do the shifting between the 4 forward gears and reverse. Something else that was very unusual and innovative for 1936 would be the front-wheel drive system. So what we're looking at here is the part of the front suspension. Here would be a half shaft or an axle shaft that's coming out of the transaxle. And here we have basically you can see part of the CV joint that would allow power to be transferred to the drive wheels. but still allow the wheels to turn to the right and left. As you can see, this cord's going to need quite a bit of work before it's roadworthy again. So if you'd like to follow along on this project, if you check out the Lions Automobilia Museum website, there you'll be able to follow along and check on the progress. And if you're in Southern California, I definitely recommend come down and check out the museum. I'm sure you enjoy it, and you can see the project in real life. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.